Oh, you're saying good. Okay, today's joke.
You gotta hook the audience in the first minute.
So, there's a guy taking a test in a big college exam, and there's 300 people there in this room, and they're all taking a test, and there's a proctor, a guy going around making sure no one cheats, looking at everyone. He says, listen guys, you got 3 hours for the test, not a minute more. Guy, if you take a minute more, you're going to get off points, you're going to get punished, blah, 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 blah. After 3 hours, he says, guys, pens down. Boom, everyone slams down their pen. One guy in the back is like,
That's me.
he's waiting 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 25 minutes later, the guy puts down his pencil and walks up to the front. The proctor's sitting there like filled with rage. He goes, excuse me, do you realize you were writing after 3 hours? So the student turns to him and he says, do you know who I am? The proctor says, I don't know who you are. And quite frankly, I don't care who you are. Because 3 hours is 3 hours. He goes, do you know who my father is? Do you know? He says, I don't care if your father is Donald Trump. 3 hours is 3 hours. So he says, do you know who my grandfather was? So he goes, I don't care if your grandfather was the Pope. 3 hours means 3 hours. The guy takes the test, stuffs it into the middle of the pile and says, have a great day, and walks right out. So, famous part. It's a famous mashal for Tefillah B'tzibur, but the Nekuda is that you, what's it called? Famous joke, but the Nekuda is that you gotta be, you gotta daven with a minion because you could stuff yourself into the rest of the people, and the tzibur is a tremendous thing. It's actually interesting, an interesting vort that the I think the Lelever, Reb David Lelever says at the end of the parsha, based on that joke, or the joke's based on that, I'm not sure. But at the end it says Pari gives a punishment to the Jewish nation. He says that they're not going to be allowed to get the straw anymore. They have to go and v'loi te'asfun. They cannot be given any more of the straw. Te'asfun. They won't be given more. Sifun, sorry. Sifun, I will not more give them the straw, is written with an aleph, which could also be written asifa, like from the shorish of gathering. So Reb David Lelever says that what Paro was trying to destroy was that the Yidden should not get together. He was trying to destroy that they should never have moments where they come together as a tzibur, because the koyach of the tzibur would be so powerful that it's a threat to his nation, and therefore he wanted to make sure that that never happened. Maisa, you see that Klal Yisrael got together in the end and in the beginning and throughout the whole thing. I'm not sure if they were together the whole time in that sense, but there's nothing like a real hard time to get people to become one, to forge them into a nation, to forge them. Your best friends are the people that you went through the craziest times with and had the most insane stories with. So that's really what was going on. And throughout this, the Yidden were falling. They were like losing most of their identity, but they didn't lose the 3 things or 4 things or whatever it is. They didn't lose their dress, they didn't lose their Yiddish names, and they didn't lose their language, Yiddish, obviously.
The dress part, brother, man. Can you explain it?
That they dressed like Jews? I mean, what did it mean? What did it mean to dress like a Jew then?
Dress like a Jew doesn't mean a specific.
This
It doesn't mean
definition
specific clothes. It means. It means
No, it's a valid question.
and
No, because here's the issue.
That's
I
what
heard
it means.
other statute always says something,
No.
which is total
Okay.
Facebook
Fake news.
bling.
Fake news. Okay. You mean like they said that people...
Yeah, that it means the
Strong on the back. So yeah, I have a hard time believing that would be true, and I would never say such a thing like that. But
No,
what?
that's why they want to go dressed the same that someone told them was dressed in Hungary 100 years ago.
I mean, the reason why people dress like a Strong on the back nowadays is because they want to dress like the people the rest of 100 years ago, but not necessarily 2,000, 3,000 years ago. What did they?
That's what it means. Also, when people say Kabbalah, that means that.
I don't know. I don't know what the Yidden dressed like in those days, but it could very well be based on what it says in Shulchan Aruch. It says in Shulchan Aruch that you should always. I mean, I'm assuming the Avos HaKadoshim held Shulchan Aruch, as we know.
They probably
probably
look like they dress.
The other one, no. It probably
they
says
dress like
in.
the material, just a little different, probably.
Yeah, that it
Like
says
we
that
dress
like,
Maybe that's
people
what
in
they
the
had
world,
pious.
then we look
or the
at
Chukai Seim Leisei Lechu, you should not dress like the Goyim. It says in Shulchan Aruch. If they dress with this type of clothing, you should dress like that type of clothing. And it also says that you shouldn't wear certain colors that are very showy. You should be dressed with more tzniut. You should dress more conservatively. So, l'chara, that's what it means.
It says no colors?
It says you should
Red.
minimize. You shouldn't wear red. Red.
It's not red, that's burgundy.
That's burgundy. That's not red, of course. It's also
Again,
burgundy.
this is more-
The scary part
I think
that the
neons in
levush
there
makes
also.
the person. That's the
The levush is a very intense part of a person, almost as much as the name, which we know is very powerful. You know, Christian and Tyler versus Motel and Motre, and the language. You know that they shouldn't
No red?
speak like that.
Listen, they probably look like they do in Saudi Arabia today, no?
Very likely, but what he's asking, everyone looked like that. I mean, so where did they distinguish themselves from the average Saudi
They didn't
Arabian?
They didn't wear the red
Nothing about
carpet.
it is
Right,
just
they didn't
said.
wear the red
It's
keffiyehs,
not
they
a
wear the white
biblical
keffiyehs.
story.
Not sure, but it's a good question, honestly. I don't know. You'd have to look.
This is red.
Tzarchian.
Does he not flashy colors? Just not red.
I think he says not to be that the whole point of tznius. It's a point to be not anything that doesn't grab attention, be non-grabbing attention.
In all your clothes.
One of my rebbeim always used to say that all the speeches that they give to the ladies, tznius and vadim and kennesses and everything, he says if you look through Chazal, 95% of Chazal, when it mentions the word tznius, is a reference to men.
Yeah, but they made it about women.
Yeah, so they chop the 5%, but he says a man that works b'tznias, his wife also and everyone else around him will be b'tznias.
What's
A man needs to go humbly, to go with modesty. No, that's what I'm saying. It's not just clothing. It's everything. Your behavior, the way you talk, the way you walk. You don't scream and shul. Hey, what's up? You know, like everything. Everything is b'tzniut. So, anyways, but that's the nakuda. They kept those three things. That's a good question. Being that we're on Facebook and these things, we'll open it to the tzibur. Whoever has ideas, please share it on the comment section. Thank you very much. And that's below.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel at www. Anyways.
strudel.co.il.
It seems that there's a lot going on here, but inside, Lemaisa, Klal Yisrael was falling, right? We say that the whole time they were falling, they were losing all of their mitzvahs and anything that they had, they were losing. But there was a core that was still bursting, that was still alive, they're still vibrant, and you see it also in a lot of the stories that come out from this week's parsha, which is amazing that when you think about it, like the whole Galus Mitzrayim, we have tons of midrashim of how terrible it was and how long it was. In the parsha, it's like, you know, and then it's like, okay, Moshe Rabbeinu Gula, you know, everything.
Not even like two
Like
aliyahs.
210 years of pain and suffering, and like.
You mean?
3 aliyahs.
Yeah.
Two or three
Why, it's
aliyahs.
split over Shemos and Bo.
Yeah, but that's already the starting of the Gula. Yeah.
It's like going
Like
to Kal
the you know, you could probably write a book on the
Oh,
pain and the
right.
suffering and the destruction. You know, and there are books, there are midrashim, and there are many books written on it. But
Who made it that each week there's a new pastor? Should have been once a month.
once a month.
No, I'm asking you.
It's from a long time ago, but the Teimanim don't do it like that, right?
What do you mean? What do they do?
There are maybe nowadays they do, but there are definitely a Teimanish Messiah that does it once every 3 years.
The whole Torah.
The whole Torah.
So you don't have to come every week to it.
Yeah, you don't have to come every once every 4 or 5 weeks.
No.
You come.
No. It's not so much. It gives you a chance at least.
Learn it.
learn the second
Some.
one.
Right. At least I might have a chance to make a rechatar. Come on, give me 4 weeks. It's around how long it takes to do a
You
parsha,
have to
right?
think about it. You have to come much earlier to shul because they're spreading it out over 3 years. It's a much shorter
Sure, parsha.
parsha.
Right, so you wouldn't have.
Lane's done.
You don't even late. If you missed, if you came, if you came by Baruch Hu, you're finished. I hear that. You always have that hour break in the middle. You catch up. Okay, I like that. I like that. That's talking real. So it seems that you see right away with all these different people that are mentioned in the parsha, a lot of the godless of what was going on. So we have Shifra and Puah right in the beginning of the parsha before even Moshe is born. Shifra and Puah. So one of the questions that were brought up is that who were Shifra and Puah? They were Yocheved and Miriam, and they would be Mishaper and Pu to the children. They would actually Parah said to kill them, and they wouldn't just take care of them. They would mamish clean them, and Pua would sit there cooing the child, make sure that they wouldn't be
Literally do like probably poo poo poo.
poo poo poo. Yeah, that's what it says in Rashi. Poo 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 poo. Like quiet them. Shh. They would be mishaper the children. So one of the question is that every Jewish mother would do that. Any Jewish woman with a heart that sees a newborn would try to help them, take care of them. So Rabbi Gluck actually said one of his parsha sheets, or his Rebbe, a line like this: the big things are the things that we do. The small things are things that we are. So when it comes down to it, meaning that you're right, sometimes a person does a big action and it's an amazing thing, but the fact that they were doing something that meant so much in the sense that they were supposed to kill these kids and they knew that they would risk their life, and they went over and above to do something from something that came inside, that's something that they are, that's something that's even more powerful than sometimes the things that we do. But Lamaisa, there's a question that's brought down: why didn't the Torah mention their names? They were Yechavet Amirim, say Yechavet Amirim, and then you could have some medrash, that they're Meshaper, and they were, why do you have to call them Shifra and Pua? So I heard this week, someone said that, what is it? They gave life to the Yaladim. It means that they didn't just save their lives, they literally gave them lives. And how do you do that? If, a little homiletically speaking, the Vatchayena is the Shifra and the Pua. That when you have a child, so instead of just knocking them down and telling them to behave and screaming at them all day, so be mishaper them and give them a little encouragement and give them nice words, and mishaper them with words that are nice, and be Pua, they give them, listen to them and care for them with words, encouraging words all the time. A lot of the mechanchim and the Jewish world and the secular world give you ratios that you should be 80% positive and 20% negative, all sorts of numbers. But the truth,
They never had these numbers before.
yeah, halavai that when you get there that you should do anything close to that. But the nekuda is to try to do that because it's mamish mechaya a child. The children need a lot of encouragement, as do we all need a lot of positive encouragement. And we have to be careful because very often we just, especially when you're a parent and you're tired or whatever, you just lose it and you just throw out the wrong words. And then, so generally speaking, you're like, all right, just be quiet, go to sleep, something like that. But very often there's a story that Rabbi Jacobson said this past week of a sister and a brother that were on the cattle trains going to Auschwitz, and the sister, 15 years old, looks at the 8-year-old brother, and she says, "What happened? Where did you lose your shoe?" So, we're on a train to a crazy place. I don't know what's going to be. We're in a war. They're trying to kill us. It's freezing cold, and you lost in the running to the trains your shoe. How do you expect to survive? Mommy's not here. No one's here except for me, and I don't have any shoe to give you. She gave it to him. 3 hours later, they get off the train. He goes straight to the crematorium, and she lives. And she said after the war, she promised herself 2 things. She promised herself that if she lived and survived such Gehennim, then she was going to live life. She wasn't just going to be another person that just let's just survive. No, I'm going to live life. And she also promised herself that she would never say anything to a child that wouldn't be the last thing that she would say to that child, ever. She felt that so strongly, so powerfully, that she would never do that. Now, what?
Wouldn't say anything that would be the last thing.
Yeah. The kids drink up and jumping on your head, you get off of me! If that
No,
chas
she wouldn't
v'shalom,
regret. She wouldn't regret.
chas v'shalom, if that was the last thing that you told to your child,
Right.
would you feel okay about that line? No? Then don't say it. Now, obviously, for anyone that's a parent or anyone even has a parent knows that that's not such an easy thing to live up to. Because technically speaking, you should do that with your friends and your spouse and everyone. Every line that you live, every word, minute, and every moment. What? Especially kids. So halavai that we should be zeichet to live up to that, even a tiny drop. But the point is that we should try to realize that it's very important to be kind and compassionate to everyone around you, and no matter what they're doing, no matter who they are. This is the famous vort that the Lubavitcher says on this week's parsha. Saw it last year. He says later in the parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu was running after a shepsel in the desert, and he finds him. He carries him back, and whoop, he sees the snet. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "Now I've chosen you. You're going to be the redeemer of Klal Yisrael." So why? Any shepherd that's given the responsibility to take care of the shepselach, so they have to take care of the shepselach. They're expected to basically make sure that they're safe. So why is Moshe Rabbeinu all of a sudden they say, "Wow, Moshe Rabbeinu, you're so incredible, you're so amazing that you did this." So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, why? Because if you look into the story a little bit deeper, you see that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't just take the shepsel and say, "You shepsel, what did you do? Why are you running away? What are you doing?" Pulls him back to the flock, throws him back in the flock. Stay with the chevra, stay in the box. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said, "Wait a minute. Why is he running away? Why is he straying?" And he realized it's because he was thirsty. He said, "Come, I'm going to carry you to a water." And he brought him to the water and he fed him. And he said, "That's the leader of Klal Yisrael. When you see a yingala, a Yiddish kind that's going off the derech, it's running, what are you doing? Stop it! Go back!" He says, "No, what's wrong? Something's missing. Something's going on inside." Then you realize that it's a different story. The Nakuda is on a very, very, very deep level. Now, obviously, it's a vort for us to deal with ourselves of going off the derech, which sometimes happens, and for anyone else that's going off the derech, not to just to realize something's going on inside, but
Different
also
derech.
what
Different derech.
different derech, yeah. That's
Yeah,
a-
this
thing is
doesn't have
off.
to mean in a macro sense. It could be like in a micro sense. You know what I mean? Like we're always.
Whoa, use micro
machines.
Oh my gosh.
Did you just macro us?
You got macroed.
This guy's in college, dude. So explain yourself, Mr.
I'm saying like if you go off the dark, it doesn't have to mean like kids doing hard drugs on the street. It means your own personal struggles with like what we call sometimes deviant behavior. Deviating from your own best self-interest.
For your own self, yeah, for sure. Like, and the truth is,
from your own path.
Again, macro means what in this? What explain?
that's beyond the scope of our discussion. Right?
I thought that was the.
We'll delve into that in our next session.
Library.
We're out of time. I'm sorry. Just pay it to the secretary. Anyways, but what is it that? Yeah, you're right. It's on every level. But the point is also that to do such a thing requires yourself to look at the other person in a totally different light and to really understand another person. Because when I look at that person from my perspective, I'm seeing something that's wrong. How could he not come to Shachris? There's I won't get too personal, but there's get personal. The point is that you realize that someone else is from in a different perspective and place. A lot of this parsha, if you look a theme through this parsha from beginning to end on all the different characters practically that I mentioned in the parsha, all have that nakuda, that they're people that are able to go out of themselves and care and understand another person. It's a pella. You start from Shifra and Pua, like we said, they went out of themselves and they realized that they gave of themselves to the Yiddish Kindlach more than what they were expected to do. They cared for the people on a much higher level. Even the Baal HaTurim brings down a Peladik Baal HaTurim, which is pretty famous for those that know it, that Shifra comes in the name of Shifaiferes, which is a pipe, a tube. So much so that she carried this little tube that if a baby was Nebuch, having trouble breathing, she would right away be able to, like a doctor, be able to resuscitate them, go straight into their lungs and breathe and do, Like that's the level of care that these people were going through, risking their lives to do it. They went out of their way. Batya comes to the sea, and she hears a baby crying, and she goes out of herself, and she says, even though it's a Jewish thing, and it seems like she was already beginning the Gioras process, but still, she goes out of herself to take that child and care for it and take it in as her own. Moshe Rabbeinu, obviously, from that, grows up in the house of Paroi with obviously every luxury he could possibly imagine, I'm sure. And yet, at a certain point, he knows that he's Jewish. He goes out, he sees his brethren, and it says, he put his heart to go out of his own self where he could just go back to the palace and not care and just live his life, and cared for people that were suffering. And so much so that he killed the Mitzri, and the next day he had to run away. And I'm sure he understood that by doing that, even though he looked the kai and he thought no one would see, but I'm sure he understood that he was risking his comfort zone by doing that. which he didn't for 62 years. He was out in the fell. Then he gets to Midian, and right away he cures for these shepherdess girls. He goes out of his way to care for other people that were being harassed by other people, by these guys. And then we get to the burning bush. I'm just saying the theme goes straight through the parsha. The burning bush, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Sha'al na'alecha mi'al raglecha. Take your shoes off, Moses. You're on holy ground. Yeah, some sort of song, Azai. But right here in this, right over there, I remember probably a good couple of years back, Rabbi Yaakov Heber was moving to Eretz Yisrael, and he said this word. I guess it was that parsha where he gave a little goodbye speech here, and he said, "Shal na'alecha mi'al raglecha." Hashem was telling him that when you wear your shoes, so you can't feel what's on the ground. Take off your shoes, and you step on every little pebble, every little painful thing. You feel it. That's what a leader has to be able to feel what's going on with the people. If you have your shoes on, if you're indifferent, you're not going to feel. Again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him, feel. You see the stories throughout the generations. The Chafetz Chaim, the famous story is that he used to come to the store keepers that were open on Shabbos, and he used to just sit there. He wouldn't scream, Shabbos, and throw a nice stone through the guy's thing and then walk away, He would sit there, he would just sit down with the Yid and just burst into tears, heaping, sobbing and sobbing. And so I'm just saying, Shabbos, Shabbos, and just crying. And the Yid would get the message, and he would just close his door. I just heard this week, Reb Steinman, there's a Yid that was very close to Reb Steinman. He came and gave him unbelievable shmooze, all sorts of amazing stories. One of the things he said was that Reb Steinman was just once talking to him, he said, I have a hard time believing that these guys in Bar Ilan that are throwing rocks and screaming Shabbos are Lishma. He says, why? They seem Lishma, they're very serious, they're screaming, they're going, they're making Afghanas and everything. He goes, if you really cared about Shabbos on that level, then you wouldn't be able to come home and eat your cholent. And these guys are eating their cholent. They eat the nice cholent afterwards. They go home, they eat a little shot and a cholent.
Steinman said this?
Steinman, this is what this Yid said. He said, you can eat your cholent afterwards, you don't really care for Shabbos. He said a similar thing. He said that he was sitting around with a whole bunch of Chaver of Steinman, and he said, how much do you think Chet really hurts us? How much do you think we really feel Chet? $1,000. Like if someone would pay $1,000, I would feel it, Chet. Steinman says, I say 5 shekel, but I'm not sure. And the guy was like, 5 shekel, $1.50? What? They were arguing back and forth. At the end, they were trying to convince him. He said, maybe 10 shekel. I don't think more.
For what? I don't get it.
That we feel how much it's machzer and how much deficiency that it caused in us.
Let's say if you
you'd have to pay.
Your chote, like it's as if imagine
you just lost 1,000 shekel. We feel it that it hurts us that we lost 1,000 shekel. I just by accident, mamish flicked on a light in Shabbos. It hurts so much.
Yeah, I agree with him. It's probably in 10 shekel.
5-10 shekel range, right? But that's ish emes to think that because most people would say, of course,
I think it depends on the
$10,000.
person.
No, it depends.
Yeah, depends on the avera and it depends on how much.
The $20 bears and the $20,000.
But then again, even
really.
I don't know, even the $20,000 averas, you have to feel it. You have to be sensitive to it. You're right. But the nakuda is that you have to feel it. Yeah, the Chafetz Chaim felt it, and there's a story that just came out a couple of years back. There was a 70-year-old secular Yid that walked into a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and he said, I want to start learning. I want to become from. So they were like, great, nice, but why? Where are you coming from? So he said his story was that many years before, his mother was a Holocaust survivor. She had nothing. She had no one. And she sent him to an orphanage. Turns out that the orphanage was run by Rav Kahneman, the famous Panovitcher Rav, who
He's very involved with
a lot of orphanages, right? And he, as the famous story goes, as a side note, a story within a story within a story, to get to another story, that
little girl,
yeah,
the dress.
No, not the little girl in the dress. That one I don't even know. You can tell me after. But the story went that he was opening orphanages to help Yiddish Kinderlach, but within that he would obviously produce, religious Jews from it because it was run in a religious fashion. So he went to South Africa, and one of these South Africans in the 1960s we're talking about said, "I'll give you $1 million if you promise to me that this $1 million won't be used for anything, these religious things that you tzitzis and these tefillin and all this stuff." He said, No problem. Signed the check, gave it to him. The Gabbaim were like, Rebbe, how could you do that? He said, don't worry, you'll see. He went back and opened an orphanage for girls. So there was no problems. They were just living. Kids, this boy said that Rav Kahneman, once his mother found out that he was doing tzitzis and tefillin and all these things, mother got furious, pulled him out. So Rav Kahneman Mamish took a taxi down to Tel Aviv where she lived and sat there with her, speaking to her. Why? What's going on? She described her whole experience through the war and how bitter she was at Hashem and all that, and she didn't want anything to do with religion. Didn't want her kids to have anything to do with religion, nothing. So he tried convincing her. He saw that he couldn't. So he sat down and he just put his head down and he just cried there for 10 minutes when he realized that this woman can't change it and she's just going to take him away. He sat there crying over the sadness, loss of a Yiddish neshama. He said that was 61 years ago. He said, for 61 years I haven't had anything to do with religion, but I never forgot the cries. And he said, now it's just, they're not stopping in my head. I have to find out. I have to start learning. He became from. The Nakuda is that when people care, so when you care about something, you cry about something, when it really means something to you. All these stories that we just brought down and the stories from the Parsha show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself in the Parsha, it says, Vayar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a bechina that he was turned away from Klal Yisrael, Kaviyachol, and then all of a sudden he sam lev. That was the same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was sam lev. He put his heart to it. So how do we do that? So there's a lot of ways. On one very, I guess it would be a simplistic level, would be that we try to relate to it, right? If someone else is going through a tzara, so someone's sick, so Baruch Hashem, I feel great right now. And he's going through a terminal illness, something that's mamish, he has so much pain and so much suffering, and he could mamish not live through it. So I try to remember sometime that I was in a situation that I was mamish so sick and put myself back in that place, and by Rifleinu I could actually start to feel, I'm not there, but I could feel some level of connection on whatever the person's going through. There always is a place in your life that you could, if you work on it and you take a few moments out in your moment, in your time, in your Shemana Esrei, in your Zebedis, wherever you are, to put yourself in from whatever experiences you've had and relate to that, you could do that. There was a story, to have another story, that there was a couple that didn't have children for many years, and they finally had twin girls. After a couple of years, these mischievous twin girls, Ramish Baruch Hashem, a lot of times you see that with the people that don't have any kids. After they have the kid, those kids like all over the place, You want the kids so badly? Here they are. Enjoy. They're like that. So, yeah. So,
Think the same way.
like the stand-up comedians always say, like, take my kids. No, really, take them. But so here you had these two kids. They finally went on a vacation. And they were in a hotel, and the father was away, and the mother was with the two kids. And as usually happens, like happened last year with the kid that jumped into the beers in the San Francisco Zoo, that she turned around for a third of a second, and boom, one of the kids is gone. She has one. She grabs him. She's like, "Where's the other girl?" Gone. So she starts getting frantic, asking. Usually you find them within a minute or two. No one could find them. She saw a whole group of Beis Yaakov girls. She said, "Girls, emergency, please, you have to all go out. There's a hotel on the grounds and everywhere." They all started running. They all started going. Everyone started finding. After like 2 hours, an hour, they come back. Girls missing. They're going crazy. They're sending out more and more people. Finally, after like an hour and 20 minutes, a little Beis Yaakov girl comes with the 4-year-old missing girl. And so she turns to her, and she's obviously overwhelmed. She hugs and kisses the girl, and afterwards she looks and turns to this Beis Yaakov girl. She says, "What made you continue doing that? What prompted you to do that?" So she said, "My name is Kletzky. My brother was Leiby Kletzky, who was abducted and killed. They were searching for him, and they eventually found him." But when something is from you, and you experience something, you feel for it, you care for it. It's a natural emotion. But when we're caring for other people, it's not always a natural emotion. And sometimes we have to, project. We have to figure it out. On a different level, we could say that also connects with the parsha somewhat, that you could daven for it. There's in the parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu has the signs, the Isis. He says, "Hashem, I need signs." Klal Yisrael is not going to believe me. So Hashem says, "Take your stick," boom, turns into a snake. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, gets so afraid and runs away in fear. Here's Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to God. And he's Moshe Rabbeinu, and he just saw that it was a stick, and Hashem told him something's going to happen. So he's so scared, he's frightened, he's running away. What happened? So the Panim Yafeh says, Kadosh Baruch Hu removed from within Moshe's heart all levels of Emunah. And for those minutes, those seconds, he was just empty. He just, as if Hashem didn't exist, as if he was in the biggest darkness of the world, and all he saw was a snake, and he ran. Why? Because he was showing him, Emunah, you think Emunah is something that you have and the other guys, the Yidden, don't have? I could take your Emunah away, and I could give you Emunah back. I could take their Emunah away, and I could give it back in a second. So don't think that Klal Yisrael can't believe, because in a second I can give the Emunah. So too with hearing and with all these levels that we're speaking about from the Parsha that you see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also, if he wants, he can give it to us. Reb Nachman himself said that in the beginning when people would ask him to daven for them, he felt it very hard to daven for them. He didn't feel for them. So he davened and davened and davened and davened and davened that he should feel the pain of another Yid. And he said after a while he felt the pain so acutely that it was more than the person that actually came to him for the tzara. He would mamish feel it like on the deepest levels, and he would pray and he would try to bring all these yeshuas for other people from that place, that level. So again, if we also want to do these things, so like in this week's parsha, we do whatever we can. Batya stretched out her arm, as everyone knows, and it just went further and further into the sea. So we should be zeicha that we should just continue to try, and like the famous, to end off, the Ve'ela Shemos B'nai Yisrael Baal Turim says, the Shnai Mikra V'Echet Targum, the reference to Shnai Mikra, like we were saying, if you have a month, then maybe you could do it, but even in a week you're supposed to be doing it al pi halacha also. But why is it that all of a sudden there's a Rosh Tevus, Shnai Mikra, and Shemais? You should have brought it in the first pasuk of Bereshis, Shnai Mikra V'Echet Targum. So one of the pshatim that I've heard was, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling us, it's never too late. You missed the whole Bereshis, it didn't even start. Shnai Mikra, Shemais comes. Here's a remez. Let's go. So wherever we are, it's never too late. Whatever little bit that we can grab onto, we should try to daven for it and try to relate to it and try to be caring people. And Hashem, we should be zeicha to care for the Shechina, which is really the main thing. And from that, we should get out into the Geula Shlema. Barachim Gedolim v'Hevim Min Amamish. Amen. Shkoyach. Have a great Shabbos. L'chaim.